Learn with MS English. Speak English with confidence. Learn, practice, speak.
So picture this. You're sitting in a crowded meeting room.
Oh yeah, we have all been there.
Right. And the person at the head of the table asks a question, and you actually know the exact answer. Like it's right there in your head.
But your brain just completely shuts down.
Exactly. Suddenly your heart is just pounding against your ribs, your throat tightens up, and instead of just, opening your mouth and speaking, you sit there in total silence. You just let the moment pass.
It's incredibly frustrating.
It is. And why does the human brain actively sabotage us when we actually have the right answer?
Well, it is one of the most maddening experiences we go through. You have the competence, right? But your nervous system treats the act of speaking up like you are stepping out onto a tightrope without a net.
Yeah, and you sent us a stack of notes today because you noticed something fascinating about that exact phenomenon. We're looking at a transcript from a video by the YouTube channel called Speak English with Class.
Yes, which is a fantastic resource.
It really is. Now, if you look at this on the surface, it's an English learning video. It's about language acquisition. But the mission of our deep dive today is to look completely past the grammar lessons.
Right, because there is so much more going on under the hood.
Exactly. Because what this material actually delivers is honestly a masterclass in human psychology. It uses the terrifying experience of speaking a new language as a testing ground to deconstruct the mechanics of confidence.
And how to overcome those invisible mental roadblocks that hold you back in literally any area of life.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the contrast between our Hollywood expectations of confidence and the psychological reality presented in these notes is pretty jarring.
To even begin building that kind of unshakable confidence, the material makes a very strong argument that we first have to demolish a pervasive cultural myth. We have this deeply flawed blueprint of what confidence is actually supposed to look like in the real world.
We really do. We have this misconception that the confident person is, always the loudest one in the room.
Right, the person holding court at a party.
Yeah. They never sweat, they never stumble over their words, and they certainly never ever make a mistake.
Which is just fiction.
It is. If we take the language learning example from the notes, the myth is that you can't be confident until you have, memorized the entire dictionary and achieve flawless pronunciation.
Which is a completely impossible standard. I mean, it sets the finish line so far out of reach that most people refuse to even start the race.
Yeah, why bother playing a game you can't win?
Exactly. And what stands out in these notes is the pivot away from that perfectionist fantasy. True confidence, as defined here, has absolutely nothing to do with the absence of nerves.
Oh, wow. Can you say more about that?
Well, it is simply the belief that you can handle a situation despite your nervous system screaming at you. It's the act of raising your hand and being entirely okay with the statistical probability that you are going to mess up.
Okay, I love that. I was thinking about it like a movie set. False confidence is like a movie set facade. It looks great on camera, but there's no substance behind it. It's empty.
That's a great way to put it.
But real confidence is like a building's plumbing. It's not glamorous, you don't really want to look at it, but it's about function. It's about showing up and doing the work, not putting on a show.
Yes, but knowing that intellectually and doing it physically are two wildly different things. What's fascinating here is how the notes outline these incredibly intense physical barriers that stop people from showing up.
Right, like we were talking about at the beginning. The blank mind, the shaky hands.
And that very specific internal voice whispering, "Don't do it, you're going to embarrass yourself."
Yeah, that voice is the worst.
There's a really poignant anecdote in the material about a student sitting in a classroom completely paralyzed by the sheer terror of saying the wrong word.
Yeah, I read that part. It's heartbreaking because you could just feel the anxiety. But why does the brain react to a harmless classroom question like it's a life or death threat?
Because to your primal brain, social rejection actually is a life or death threat.
Wait, really? Like, literally?
Literally. From an evolutionary standpoint, if you made a fool of yourself in front of your tribe thousands of years ago, you might get cast out.
Oh, I see.
And being cast out meant starvation. So, when that student thinks about raising their hand, their amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, basically hijacks the prefrontal cortex.
So it literally shuts down the logical part of the brain that knows the English answer.
Exactly. It shuts down logic and triggers a fight, flight, or freeze response. And usually in a social setting, we freeze.
Okay, so it's basically an outdated software program running in the background.
Yeah.
The brain thinks a grammatical error is a saber-toothed tiger.
That is a very accurate way to frame it. And the notes break down the specific triggers for that alarm system. The fear of failure is the loudest, obviously.
Sure.
But there's also the trap of comparison. You look at a fluent speaker or, a highly charismatic colleague, and your brain immediately calculates the gap between you and them.
Right. And it interprets that gap as a personal deficiency, like I'm broken because I don't sound like them.
Precisely. And then there's the heavy baggage of past experiences. If you mispronounced a word 3 years ago and someone laughed at you, your brain anchors to that memory.
Oh, man. It just holds on to it forever.
It does. It projects that past social pain onto every single future attempt to speak.
Okay, so I'm going to look at the mechanics of fixing this. Because if these invisible barriers, the comparison, the fear, the memory of being laughed at, if they're fundamentally software bugs, cognitive misfires, then trying to fix them by just pushing harder physically won't work.
Right. You can't force it.
Yeah, you can't muscle your way through a software glitch. You have to rewrite the code.
And that requires a fundamental shift in how we perceive our own capabilities. The material attacks the idea that confidence is some magical genetic trait you are either born with or you aren't.
Right, it's not eye color.
Exactly. It operates on the principle that confidence is constructed. And the baseline code for that construction is moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Okay, I want to stop you right there. I'm going to play the skeptic for a second on behalf of anyone listening who has, read a self-help book in the last 10 years.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
So the notes talk about shifting out of a fixed mindset, like telling yourself, I'll never be good at this, and moving into a growth mindset by using tools like affirmations.
Yes. Repeating phrases like, I am getting better every day.
Right. Or practicing daily gratitude. Now, I have to be honest here. Whenever I hear the phrase practice gratitude or say affirmations in the mirror, my eyes just roll to the back of my head.
It sounds a bit cliche.
It feels like toxic positivity. Like, I have to ask, does repeating affirmations or visualizing yourself speaking confidently actually work, or is it just hollow cheerleading?
It is very easy to dismiss it as self-help fluff. I completely understand the eye roll. But the reason these notes advocate for those specific practices isn't about positive vibes at all. It is actually rooted in cognitive neuroscience.
Okay, I'm listening. How so?
There is a network of neurons in our brainstem called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. Think of it as a filter, or maybe a search engine algorithm for your brain.
A search engine. Okay.
At any given second, your brain is processing billions of bits of sensory data. You can't possibly pay attention to all of it. So the RAS decides what gets brought to your conscious attention and what gets ignored.
Oh, like when you buy a red car and suddenly you see that exact red car everywhere you go.
Yes, perfect example.
The cars were always there, but your filter wasn't looking for them before.
Precisely. Your RAS was programmed to ignore them until they became relevant to you. Now apply that to your self-image.
Oh boy.
If your internal monologue is, I am terrible at speaking, everyone is judging me, you have just typed that query into your brain's search engine, your RAS will actively seek out proof to validate that belief.
So we'll highlight the one person yawning in the back of the room and completely ignore the 5 people nodding along with you.
Exactly. It filters out your success to confirm your negative bias.
That is terrifying. It's a neurological self-fulfilling prophecy. You are literally blinding yourself to your own progress.
So when the material tells you to use an affirmation like, I am getting better every day, or to focus on gratitude for a small win, you are not cheering yourself up.
You're hacking the search engine.
You are manually reprogramming the search query in your reticular activating system. You are forcing the brain to look for evidence of your competence. Once the brain starts collecting that new evidence, the negative self-talk just loses its foundation. It's an algorithmic update.
Okay, I love that reframing. It's not magic, it's data collection. But here is the massive hole in that strategy, at least to me.
Let's hear it.
If I reprogram my brain's search engine to look for confidence, but I just sit alone in my room and never actually speak to anyone, well, there are no search results to find. Mindset without exposure is just daydreaming.
That is a very crucial caveat.
Right. At some point, the software update needs hardware to run on.
Absolutely. The mindset prepares the soil, but you still have to plant the seed. You cannot think your way into confidence.
You need proof.
Yes. The brain requires undeniable physical proof that you can survive the thing you are afraid of. And that introduces the central thesis of these notes. Confidence is built through action. It functions exactly like a muscle that needs exercise.
But not just any action. The material is very specific about the dosage here. It advocates for micro actions.
Right, very small steps.
Things you can do before you even open your mouth, like adjusting your body language, standing tall, making eye contact. And when you do speak, the advice here is actually totally counterintuitive.
How so?
Well, we usually think sounding confident or smart means using big words and speaking really quickly, right, to prove we know our stuff. But the notes say you should use simple vocabulary and speak slowly and clearly.
Think about the physiological signal you are sending to your own nervous system when you do that. When you rush and use overly complex sentences, you are increasing your cognitive load while simultaneously depriving yourself of oxygen.
Oh, because you're forgetting to breathe.
Exactly. And your brain interprets that rushed, breathless state as panic. But when you slow down, use words you are entirely comfortable with, and just pause to breathe, you are signaling safety to your amygdala. You are demonstrating control over the space.
You know, here's where it gets really interesting to me. I was thinking about this whole process of micro actions, and it reminds me of building a callus.
A callus. Okay, walk me through that.
Well, people always use the cliche of laying bricks to build a wall when talking about habits. You lay one brick, then another, and eventually you have a wall. But a wall doesn't change you. It's just a thing outside of you. A callus physically changes your body.
That is a fascinating distinction.
Yeah. And if you want to build a callus on your hand, you don't take a hammer and smash your palm. That's a massive risk, and it just leaves you with a painful blister that forces you to stop trying altogether.
Right. You build it through repeated low-level friction over time.
Exactly. And that is what these small daily risks are. The notes suggest taking one micro risk a day. Ask one small question in a meeting. Greet one new person in the hallway. Practice one English sentence out loud to yourself.
That is the low-level friction.
Yeah, you are thickening your psychological skin without causing a blister.
The material actually highlights a fantastic real-world case study of this exact mechanism. There is a listener mentioned in the source named Ahmed who was completely paralyzed by the idea of speaking at his workplace.
Oh, I remember this part.
Yeah.
He had really valuable insights, right? But that invisible barrier kept his mouth shut in every meeting.
Yes, he was suffering from that freeze response we talked about earlier.
Okay, so how did he build his callus?
Well, he didn't try to cure it by volunteering to give a keynote presentation to the executives.
Right, no hammer to the hand.
Exactly. He started with the smallest possible friction. He practiced with podcasts for just 5 minutes a day, entirely alone.
Wow, just 5 minutes?
Just 5 minutes. Then, once that felt safe, he graduated to speaking with colleagues in very low-stakes environments, maybe just chatting by the coffee machine. He gave his brain tiny, undeniable proofs of survival.
And it compounded.
It did. Over time, that callus built up, and the notes mention that he now confidently leads the very meetings he used to hide in.
That is incredible. There was also a great note about the speaker from the source video who used to be terrified of large crowds.
Yes, their approach was very practical.
Right, their micro-action wasn't picturing the audience in their underwear, which is terrible advice, by the way.
It really is. It just distracts you.
Exactly. Their micro-action was simply the habit of taking one deep breath and forcing their speaking pace to slow down, just manufacturing that feeling of calm until the brain actually believed it.
But we have to look at the environment where this friction is taking place. You can't build this callus in a vacuum. The notes bring up that old Jim Rohn quote, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with."
I have to admit, that's another one of those self-help cliches that usually makes me tune out. We've all heard it 1,000 times.
We have, but again, look past the cliche to the neurology happening underneath it. Why does the environment matter so much?
I assume it has to do with how we absorb other people's stress.
Yes. The material emphasizes joining supportive communities and ruthlessly limiting exposure to negative people or even cynical social media feeds. The reason for this is mirror neurons. Our brains are hardwired to sync with the emotional states of the people around us.
So if you are surrounded by people who are highly critical or terrified of failure themselves, your brain mirrors that threat level. You catch their anxiety.
Yes, but if you join a supportive community like a language exchange group or a professional forum, you are watching other people take risks.
Oh, I see where this is going.
You are watching them make mistakes, stumble over words, and crucially, you are watching them survive it without being ridiculed.
Seeing that social proof calms your own nervous system.
Exactly. It recalibrates your baseline for what is safe. A supportive environment doesn't just encourage you, it literally downregulates your threat response. It multiplies your confidence because the brain perceives less danger in the room.
That makes total sense. You are essentially borrowing their survival data to update your own algorithms.
That is a brilliant way to phrase it.
Which actually brings us to the final and I think the most brilliant layer of this entire deep dive. We've talked about the neuroscience of mindset, the mechanics of microactions, and the biology of our environment. But the source material does something incredibly clever with the actual words we use.
Yes, the vocabulary breakdown.
Right. It provides a vocabulary list, ostensibly for English learners, but it uses the definitions to reframe our relationship with failure. It's so smart.
It acts as a form of cognitive behavioral therapy hidden inside a language lesson. The notes examine words that are typically seen as the enemies of confidence, words like embarrass, whisper, hold back, and judge.
Right. Normally, if I say I'm embarrassed, that's a terminal statement. It's the end of the road. It feels permanent.
But the material reframes embarrassment as a temporary internal hurdle. It points out that the biological feeling of embarrassment fades quickly, and what feels agonizing today is usually just tomorrow's funny dinner party story.
It takes all the sting out of it.
They apply that same re-engineering to the words struggle and barrier. It is so common to view a struggle as a red flag, right? A sign that you are on the wrong path or that you lack the required talent.
Yeah, like this is hard, so I must be bad at it.
Exactly. But the notes redefine a struggle as the actual mechanism of growth. If you aren't struggling, you aren't building the callus.
And a barrier is no longer defined as a dead end. It is simply a wall that, with enough time and microactions, becomes a door.
It changes the entire emotional weight of the language. When they define words like colleague, mindset, affirmation, gratitude, recognize, and lift up, they aren't just giving you synonyms. They are handing you an inventory of psychological tools.
Wow, yeah. A colleague isn't just a coworker. It's someone to co-regulate your nervous system with. Recognizing isn't just seeing something. It's the active practice of forcing your reticular activating system to log a victory.
And this leads to a profound realization for anyone listening right now. This raises an important question. How are you describing your own friction?
That is the million-dollar question.
The material includes a quote that anchors this entire concept. Your words matter. What you say to yourself each day becomes the story you live. That isn't poetry. It is the literal truth of how our brains construct our reality based on the language we feed them.
So if your internal narrative is, I am a failure, your brain will execute that script flawlessly. If your narrative is, I am building a callus one uncomfortable sentence at a time, your brain will execute that script.
It really forces you to take responsibility for the instructions you are giving your own mind.
It does. So when we synthesize all of these notes, all this psychology and neurology, what is the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener?
I think the biggest paradigm shift here is that confidence is never about being perfect. We have to completely let go of that movie scene illusion.
Yes, true confidence is an incredibly messy biological process. It is about showing up even when your amygdala is screaming at you, your hands are shaking, and your voice is trembling.
Because as the material wisely points out, progress always comes before confidence.
Say that again because that's huge.
Progress always comes before confidence. You do not get confident and then decide to take action. You take the terrifying action first, you survive it, you make progress, and the confidence is just the byproduct of that survival.
Which brings us to the challenge embedded in these notes.
Yes, the material issues a direct challenge to the listener.
Take one confident step today. It should not be a massive, terrifying leap. Just create one tiny moment of friction. Speak a single sentence out loud. Start a 2-minute conversation with a barista. Share an opinion in a meeting that you normally would have swallowed.
It doesn't have to be big. It just has to happen today. You have to give your brain a new piece of data.
Exactly. And as you decide what that one small step is going to be today, consider this final thought from our end. We spend an enormous amount of our lives trying to figure out how to stop being afraid.
We view fear as a disease that needs to be cured before we can start living.
Right. But if true confidence is simply a byproduct of taking action despite your fear, then perhaps the ultimate goal in life isn't to eradicate our fear at all.
Perhaps the real goal is simply learning how to walk comfortably alongside it.
So the next time you find yourself in that crowded meeting room and the silence is deafening and your heart is hammering against your ribs, don't look for the exit. Don't worry about sounding like a polished movie star. Just take a breath, accept that it's going to feel uncomfortable, and take the risk anyway, because that is the only way the callus grows.